Well, it's been a huge week in our politics. I've got to tell you, I don't know if it's over yet. We still have meetings of the ANC's National Working Committee coming on Monday, an NEC meeting next weekend. The big focus still on the President's testimony at the Zondo Commission, but also on the Step Aside resolution, and in particular on Ace Magashule, the Secretary-General. Also, issues around the former Premier of Northwest, Supra Mahumapelo. We're joined now by the analyst, Professor Sitalego Matabisi. We, of course, have quite a long conversation on all the things that happened this week. We could be here, well, frankly, until next week. Professor, good afternoon to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time. I really do appreciate it. There are many things that come out of the President's testimony. Perhaps one of them is the acknowledgement that the ANC should have acted against corruption earlier than it did, that it failed to act against corruption. I don't know, though, if he's really explained why the ANC failed to act. How do you see it?
Hi, good afternoon, Stephen, and good afternoon to the viewers. Yes, definitely it's a watershed week for the African National Congress. Many things happen political-wise. If you look at the decision around the former Premier of Northwest, if you look at the deadline for a step aside, so definitely it's these challenges are indicative of the ANC in crisis, but I don't know whether this week will not go down in the history later this year as one of the defining moments for the African National Congress. Defining moment to fight corruption, a defining moment to at least deal with the so-called untouchables within the African National Congress. I don't think anybody would have expected, even if you look at the conference, the media conferences that have been hosted by Supra Mahumapelo, that he himself believed that this kind of action will be taken against him.
I mean, in a way, it all boils down to the same question, which is, can the ANC reform itself? We spoke to Pule Mabe a few moments ago. He prefers the word renew itself. And that takes us to a question of how would we actually judge where the ANC is renewing itself? And almost immediately, unfortunately, we end up with the symbol of Ace Magashule.
Yeah, no, I remember the last time we had an interview, Stephen, although we had some technical problems, I lamented the point that you've got a Secretary General, yes, in good standing, but he's the one who's dictating the terms. I mean, he's implicated, and I've never seen any organization dealing with disciplinary measures, but yet allowing those implicated to actually continue deliberating and dictating the terms. And that, for me, it's one of the huge embarrassments for me, of where the ANC cannot deal with a simple matter such as ensuring that there is discipline in the organization. Ace Magashule, for me, currently is actually dictating the terms, but he's one of the implicated partners, and that's why it's a huge concern. It remains a huge concern, and one will still want to see how this is going to play out.
Professor Tinyiko Maluleke joins us now as well, a political analyst. Professor Maluleke, you might have heard Professor Matabisi there suggesting that Ace Magashule is currently dictating the terms of what happens. Do you go along with that? I mean, I think many people might think that Ace Magashule is actually under severe pressure right now.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't agree totally that he's dictating the terms. I think that he is under pressure, and because he is under pressure, he is probably fighting the fight of his life and will probably take out all the aces up his sleeve. So just because he's under pressure, one should not take him for granted, or his resilience and his ability to fight back. But I do think that he is under pressure. I have seen the few voices of support that have come, many of them very tentative, asking for this matter to be managed carefully and so on. But, you know, the ball is in his court. It's not this side of the play, and he will have to will have to fight hard for the ANC to come down, because the ANC has climbed very, very high in terms of this particular matter. And I don't see how Magashule will escape lightly. The problem with President Cyril Ramaphosa and those who support him is that they have a low-profile strategy, and sometimes they look weak when they are strong. They sound weak when, in fact, they are strong. So I think we must just be careful not to misread the mood and what's going on at the moment.
Professor Maluleke, I mean, obviously, the Zondo Commission, the big focus this week, President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking there. Do you think that he changed the dial on our politics or on the ANC in any significant way? Do you think, for example, that he's maybe changed the minds of some voters towards the ANC as a result of his testimony?
No, I wouldn't attach that much impact to the testimony. It wasn't a disaster for Ramaphosa, the testimony. Obviously, he managed, he navigated the questions as best as he could. I mean, he is a very experienced politician and quite good in terms of posturing and in terms of the words that he was using. And so he didn't, he didn't come out of it too badly, and therefore the ANC didn't come out of it too badly either. But I don't think that he shot the stars necessarily. I don't think that it was a stellar performance by him. The problem is that him and Zondo have got a very similar style, this lackadaisical style that is intended to lull the other party into some false sense of victory and comfort. And they were using that towards one another. And I think Ramaphosa did very well. Because the big question was, is he going to call the ANC accused number one, like he did in that letter? Is he going to push that line of attacking the party? And he didn't. He sounded more like Madashe, except in a few places.
We're speaking to Professor Tinyiko Maluleke, Professor Setelejo Matabisi, of course, political analysis of what's really been a fundamentally important week in our politics. More on this to come. Just to bring you up to date with the breaking news you see on your screen, this is the Business Rescue Program, or the Business Rescue situation at SAA. The Business Rescue practitioners confirming in a statement that they have now handed control of the corporation of SAA back to its board. In other words, it's now an independent entity again, and they go on to say that the practitioners are leaving both a solvent and a liquid SAA adequately set to continue into the future. It's important news, it's breaking news right here. We'll continue our conversation around our politics and the ANC in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Continuing our conversation around the politics of the week, and particularly the Zondo Commission with Professor Tinyiko Maluleke and Professor Tinyiko Maluleke. Professor Maluleke, if I may just resume with you, I mean, one of the big conversations, of course, is around cadre deployment. We saw Gwede Mantashe as the ANC chair discussing it earlier at the Zondo Commission. Then this week, of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa defending the policy. Do you think the ANC could really do without cadre deployment? I mean, do you see a change coming there? It wouldn't seem like it.
No, it's just as the issue of corruption. It's going to take a while, even if the president of the ANC is making some of these bold pronouncements about fighting cadre deployment and all that. But I think for me, it has been a very bold statement. But the implementation part of it is going to be very difficult. How are you going to get rid of your councillors and sometimes even officials at municipal level that have been appointed just because they are ANC members without the requisite skills? They are also going to fight back. The ANC is actually on the verge of going to its next elective conference, and all these issues will come out, to play a significant role in that elective conference. But at the end of the day, I think it's very good for the African National Congress to have a president who comes out in public and denounces some of these, publicly, to say where are the challenges in terms of this cadre deployment. But in a nutshell, I don't believe this will actually be resolved within the next year or even the next 5 years.
Professor Maluleke, I mean, the idea is, and the President, if I understood him correctly, said that, people should be appointed to positions. We're talking about, say, to be the CEO of a state-owned entity in a process that's transparent. But as long as the ANC has a deployment committee that meets on a certain floor of Luthuli House, or did before COVID-19, and as long as it meets behind closed doors, I can't see how that process could be transparent.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, this was part of the areas in the testimony of the president where his sophistry came into play, because I mean, he didn't quite condemn cadre deployment. He didn't throw it out. He justified it, in fact, and even suggested that it is not unique to South Africa, almost suggesting that the unique thing is that we have given it a name. And we have a policy and a committee that oversees these things. But he didn't quite throw it away. And that was the ANC man defending his party, as it were, although admitting that there are aspects of it that need attention. Part of the problem with that discussion about cadre deployment is how unspecific it was. So we can talk for hours about the notion of cadre deployment. But if we were to look at particular cases, people, individuals who were either helicoptered in without skills or without any context, and what happened as a result of that, what is the real cost of cadre development? And where did it work and where did it not work, and where did it fail spectacularly? I didn't quite get a sense of that. I just got a very cagey, high-level discussion between two gentlemen and, of course, the evidence leaders about cadre development without much meat, as it were.
There's a big conversation about what happens within the ANC next. And I mean, I just asked Pule Mabe, we spoke to him for about half an hour, I asked him twice, what happens if Ace Magashule steps aside? Who takes over? I don't think, if I may speak personally, I don't think we quite got a clear answer. Professor Maluleke, I mean, is that revealing at all? To my mind, it's actually going to be quite important to know in advance what happens if the Secretary-General of the ANC steps aside. This has not happened before. Professor Maluleke, I mean, how do you see that?
Yeah, no, it's very difficult to respond to that question, because there it now talks about finding a political solution for that problem, or whether you call it a challenge. But I don't understand how the ANC operates. A decision has been taken. at their conference in 2017, and here again, after several NEC meetings, decisions have been taken, and yes, the Secretary General has a legal right to appeal or actually, take on that decision. But the question is, why, when the 30 days lapses, still there's absolutely no clarity around this? So perhaps what I predict is that there will be another NEC meeting and yet another pronouncement. And what I thought that is that the disciplinary process will have to kick in. And here I'm not only referring to the Secretary General, because the ANC on several occasions have indicated this is not about the Secretary General, but for me, he is a very key figure within the African National Congress, and I thought at least he will set, the scene and actually show leadership, but that's not going to come from Ace Magashule. And actually what's going to happen within the next couple of days is definitely yet again another fight back campaign until the agency decide to suspend it.
Professor Maluleke, I must ask you as well about Supra Mahumapelo. I mean, here on Newsfeed yesterday afternoon, we saw live pictures of him making various claims about, he seemed to be suggesting that branch elections in Northwest Province were being manipulated. He, we were told, was being suspended from the ANC for 5 years. He says he is going to challenge that suspension. He'll appeal that suspension. How much power does he actually have? And all of this is before a local government election, where we, I think, are going to see, at least in Northwest, but in other provinces, big divisions within the ANC.
Yeah, we certainly are now moving into the phase of disciplinary action, both in the case of Mahumapelo and Magashule. Mahumapelo has said that he doesn't recognize the structures that are supposed to discipline him. He wants them to recuse themselves, for example. But I think we can safely predict that the next phase is the phase of internal disciplinary hearings, both in the cases of these two, but also in others. Additional to that, or following that, we should be heading to court. It seems to me that this song about presumption of innocence, these references that have been made to the constitution of the country, which is supreme and above the ANC constitutions, which have come out of Ace Magashule and out of Mahumapelo himself, are indications that should they not find joy in the internal structures, they are going to go to court. So we are in for a long battle if they choose that path. But it seems to me that we can safely assume that that's where we are going. And that can be very nerve-wracking for the ANC, and it could create a lot of havoc. Mahumapelo is already acting out on a limb, addressing conferences and doing things and addressing branches and so on. So I think that we can safely assume that's where we are going now. It will be internal disciplinary hearings, probably alongside legal challenges of this particular decision. We are going to see that, I think. I'm almost certain of that, unless the next meeting manages to prevail and change the mind of Magashule and Mahumapelo and others.
Professor Tinyiko Maluleke, Professor Setlecho Matabisi, I really do appreciate the time. Thank you, gentlemen. As I say, we could go on for another week, the three of us, talking about developments in the ANC this week and the developments still to come. Well.